Now, in the world of video games, there are a number of icons that anybody recognizes. You could easily put them in some sort of guess the Pokemon scenario, and people would know who they are right away. A good example of this is the Goombas, the standard enemies of the Super Mario games that were seen in the very first title and even the most recent one. However, after they have been around for more than 30 odd years, we've seen a lot of different types of them. So of course, after doing an evolution of video on them a long time ago, I gotta tell you what my favorites are in detail. So, here we go. Number 5. Overall, these enemies are very small, weak, and don't really have any serious attacks you should be scared of. They just walk around a bit after all, which was their purpose. They were meant to be the first foe you encounter in the game, which you can clearly see in level 1-1 from the original Super Mario Bros. For the NES. In that classic level, they are the very first enemy you encounter, becoming an instant classic immediately, but not a very exciting one. So alone, they can't really do much. Luckily enough, they know how to team up to become stronger, forming a Goomba Tower. They were first seen in Super Mario 3D Land, you know, that odd game for the 3DS, and their attack methods are still the same for the most part, running at you. However, now that they are bundled together, it's harder to get past them, especially in 2D titles where you can't run around them. But a Goomba Tower can be shortened or defeated by jumping on them, getting rid of Goombas one by one, reducing the stack slowly. But with some fancy methods like ground pounding, they can be defeated all at once. However, the great part about them is the options they give Nintendo. One amazing example seen in many games is using this Tower of Goombas as some sort of platform you can jump on. It's harder to land on since it's smaller and even moves, making it a great challenge for any player. Even in new titles like Super Mario Odyssey, they do cool things with it. It's a small task, but kinda reminds me of hide and seek or tag, since you need to collect all those Goombas who are found all over the place. Stuff like this really makes them the best, making them more than just normal enemies, but actually part of the level itself. Heck, they're even part of mini-missions like the one seen in Super Mario Odyssey, where you get a power moon as a reward, which are very important in the game. Which especially helps out these little guys, since most of the time people don't really think about the poor Goombas. Look at how sad these boyos are. Number 4. Now, while our last one played an interesting role in the game, their design is still quite boring and not interesting at all. But there's even more to it because they're still normal Goombas. Sure, there are a lot of them, but nothing is special about them. Even though they have a fun role in the game, Nintendo didn't make them stand out that much. However, our next one is a lot more special because it's cute and special in a certain way. The Mini and Micro Goombas. These small little buggers are seen throughout many different installments of the Mario franchise, old and new. Now, for the most part, they look exactly the same as any other Goomba you see in the games, but just a lot smaller. However, there are a couple of things that make them more interesting and fun than any other type. First of all, they're cute. Every time they run around with their little footsies and try to get you, my heart melts a little. Personally, I already think Goombas are quite harmless and fun, but with these, it's even worse. And in some games, instead of even dealing damage, they just jump on you and try to slow you down as much as possible. For example, in New Super Mario Bros. 2. Personally, I love this. They can't really deal damage, but forcing you to slow down can still be a pain to deal with. And surprisingly enough, these little guys are also seen in Super Mario Odyssey. And here they have a really cool and surprising role, because they can occasionally be found by breaking crates or by ground pounding certain glowy spots on the ground. And guess what? This is a great example of a trap enemy, which is a type of enemy I have talked about in many other videos as well. Now, the only goal of this foe is trying to surprise you and then take you out. And here it works perfectly, because sometimes you can find moons or coins in these places, but other times these tiny enemies will be waiting for you with a nasty gift. This is by far the best thing Nintendo has ever done with them, because when this happened to me, it actually scared me for a bit and I just fled the scene immediately. Because while in some older games they didn't really deal damage but just stuck to you like glue, in this title they actually deal damage when they run into you, making them a lot scarier. In general, I love this scenario a lot. To be honest, I never even expected Nintendo to create something like this. So even in modern games, they do some amazing things with it, which I'm really happy about. Number 3. Now, sure, these different sizes and groups of Goombas are fun and all, but when it comes down to it, they're still the same creature for the most part. Luckily enough though, Nintendo came up with the idea of combining classic Super Mario enemies with power-ups. which is actually a brilliant idea for spicing up gameplay with little to no effort on Nintendo's end, while still offering the player something truly new. And the best example of this when it comes down to the Goombas is the cat Goomba, who was first seen in Super Mario 3D World and is powered up by the Super Bell. And surprisingly enough, they have a completely new tactic for taking on the heroes of the story. They attack by jumping and then diving down, in exactly the same way that Cat Mario can, which is certainly a harder to dodge attack than just walking towards you. And the great thing is, sometimes they drop a Super Bell when defeated, which also makes it worth to take them out, because when you don't have the power-up, trying to take them out and get a power-up from it can be very handy, as well as a real lifesaver in the game. And trust me, this isn't the case with most other types of Goombas, since you get nothing from taking them out. So with those, dodging and ignoring them is the better option, but that's not the case with this type of Goomba. Personally, I like the trend of adding power-ups to enemies. It keeps things interesting and fresh, just like it did for Mario in games like Super Mario Bros. 3. Personally, I'm quite surprised Nintendo didn't do this earlier in the series. They were mostly busy making more types of them, separate from the power-ups. But to be honest, I'm really glad they did mess around with power-ups like this, because in the end, we got more interesting enemies, with this one being an amazing example, improving a lot on the good old Goomba. Number 2. So far, we've seen Goombas do all kinds of new attacks and even work together in order to make Mario's life a lot harder. However, there's one enemy that was seen very early on and also had a special power that made them harder to take out, as well as great for platforming. And surprisingly enough, the new ability that they gained is something that Mario can't even rival in many of the games. I'm talking, of course, about the well-known Para-Goombas, who first appeared in Super Mario Bros. 3, being seen in new games up to this very day. They have small wings protruding from their head or torso, which looks a bit weird, but it does give them new options. They can now fly, jump higher, and come down slowly from above. But that's not all, because if you jump on them, they will survive and turn into a normal Goomba. In some games, they even get cute little parachutes, slowly floating down ready to take on Mario. And the great thing is, while they are fun enemies, they also serve as flying platforms, similar to the Goomba Towers in a way. You can even use them to get across certain gaps you encounter, which we mostly see in 2D games where it also works the best. Even in games like Super Mario Maker 2, where the goal is to build your own level and play ones made by others, you see people use this idea a lot as well, which already shows that it's actually a really good idea and not just some mechanic or gimmick that's forced onto the players in certain Super Mario games by Nintendo. And even when you encounter them while going through the level, they can be hard to avoid because of the odd jumping mostly.
Well, personally, for me, it can be a bit hard to get past them because of how irregular they are, and it can also surprise me a bit if I encounter them, but hey, that might not be a thing for everyone else.
Number 1. And now we get to the very best one. A Goomba that's fun to take on, looks very interesting, and also drops an item that's tons of fun to use. The Shoe Goomba from Super Mario Bros. 3, which only appeared in World 5-3 and was rarely seen in any games after that, which was a huge waste in my opinion. In the game, when one spots you, it will follow you continuously by jumping towards you, and they can go really high up, which makes it hard to dodge them since it's kind of death from above, and if you don't watch out, it will be your end. But the very best part of this enemy is the item they drop, the Goomba Shoe, because you can get in it and walk on hazards as well as jump around for fun. So it's not just a fun enemy that acts wacky, you can also get the thing that makes them powerful. However, the sad thing is, they were barely seen in any Mario game. The ones that came after this acted like these ones never existed even. Only when the Super Mario Maker games for the 3DS, Wii U and Switch finally came around the corner, they were seen in fan-made levels once again. And if you shake them before placing them down, they will turn into a Stiletto Goomba, which has a greater stomp and ground pound ability when giving a Super Mushroom to them. But that's not all. You can also give them more upgrades like wings to spice them up even more. So this is for sure a great addition when it comes to combat. We even saw a new style of them, which doesn't happen often. Especially not after being gone for such a long time in the main series Super Mario titles. But it gets even better than this, because Nintendo gave us the option to freely play around with them after not seeing them for years upon years. Just think about it. It's amazing. However, it certainly did take a long time for them to finally come back. The last time we saw them in a new Super Mario game was in 1988, which is a really long time ago when you think about it. Most people watching this video weren't even born back then. I wasn't even born back then. And when you put all of this into perspective, it does make me sad to an extent. But at least they are in the spotlight once again. And don't forget about the evolutional video that I made on them. You can find it in the upper right corner and on the screen right now. So go have a look.